In this video we talk about Catacombs Conquest, which is a smaller, more portable, and also much faster to play version of the game Catacombs. I like Catacombs quite a lot. It is a strange combination of dungeon crawler ideas that are at the core of that genre with dexterity and with flicking. Basically it's like Dungeons and Dragons or Dungeons and Dragons board games in which you're flicking your heroes against monsters controlled by an overlord through different sections of a dungeon. It's a great game. It's really fun. The point is that it's very large, it's pretty heavy. I don't feel like carrying it to game night when game night is not at my place, and it takes quite a while to play. It is gonna be a long night of gaming when you play a full game of Catacombs. I like the fact that now we have an option of something that I can carry around. We were at the barbecue at a friend's house a couple of days ago, and I brought the copy and I was able to play it with friends there. So it's nice that it's portable, and also it takes much less to play. You can play in about an hour, maybe even less, depending on how players are, how good players or how clumsy players are. And you know, the other game may be superior in a general sense, but you maybe don't always feel like listening to a whole huge long concert with a super spectacular orchestra. Maybe you just want some chamber music, and this is the smaller version. Now, in the box, you will get several sets of tokens, classic Catacomb tokens. The idea is still the one that you will flick your heroes so that they travel around the board, and you're trying to hit your enemies either with melee shots, in which case you're hitting them directly with your hero, or with range shots by using, for example, an effect that lets you use this token. Then you take the token that corresponds to the range shot and you flick that against the enemy instead of your thing itself. You have health tokens. Basically, in this game, it's an arena combat in which you have two characters of one team versus two characters of the other team. Each team shares health tokens. When you hit the opponent, you reduce the health of the opponent. The first team to reduce the enemy to 0 points is the winner of the game. And you may have noticed if you know the game that I made a mistake here. As usual, the good guys should be on the white disc and the bad guys on the black disc, because that is the dark side of the force. I messed up and I put the good guys on the black disc and the bad guys on the white disc. I don't know, it's a variant, it's different from usual. You will use these little pedestals here, these bases here, to hold up these walls, and so you will prepare the arena within which gameplay will take place. I'm not gonna build a whole thing. You know how a rectangle with walls around it looks like. Within the arena, you will place the heroes of the two teams, and you will place these 5 obstacles here. Basically, each turn you will play a card each time that you activate one of your heroes. This is a card-driven flicking game. How unusual is that? Each time you activate a hero, you will play a card. You will resolve what the card lets you do, which usually will be like a rush shot, which means you can move but you don't do damage even if you hit the opponent. Melee shot, you hit the opponent and do damage by hitting the opponent. Again, range shots. And some cards will let you do multiple things, will give you several effects that you can exploit. And there you go. Here's the other character in the team. But again, cards. You get all of these cards, and these cards represent heroes, powers, things that the players can do. Basically, as you can see, you have different type of characters here that you can use, that can be represented by those tokens. And these characters and these characters have different abilities. So basically you will have a hand of cards. So pretty much the tokens that you're actually flicking don't necessarily represent unique characters unless these characters are summoning the help of these other characters. But basically we'll have a hand of cards. When it is your turn, you play a card representing, I guess, either you're borrowing the power of that character or you're recruiting that character, you morph into the character temporarily. You simply play a card. The art is nice, but again, it can be a little confusing because it makes you think of a team rather than individuals. You play a card and you do what the icons and the texts say. This symbol here, the sort of like arrow thing, means and then. That means you get to perform all of these actions in that order. So you can perform a melee shot. Again, you damage the opponent if you touch them. A rush shot, pretty much movement. You get in position and then you can throw a fireball at them, which is pretty neat. But then you have also a lot of other abilities. For example, you can heal, you can take 2 health tokens that are then added to your general pool of health tokens. Capture life. If you damage an opponent, then you capture a health token. Not just, you don't just do damage, but you get to heal. You get to move twice, but then you play another card from your hand. So basically you use this card to adjust your position and then you play a card and maybe lets you do something super powerful like this super energy wave attack. So basically different cards will let you do different things. And so play a card, do what it says, perform the actions. Usually that means try to inflict damage on the opponent and end your turn with your character possibly in a position that will not expose the character to too many enemy attacks, to too much damage. Move, at the end you can move one of the obstacles. These are all rush shots in the sense that they don't damage people, but again you may place these to try to protect your own character, so you may try to open a way so that then you can go and hit the opponent. This is just a strategy that comes from moving these things. Although I've noticed that after a while, the obstacles tend to be on the edges of the arena and not so much in the middle. You can then put them back, but for some reason that is not the thing that happens the most often. The other team does the same. That is, the other team also gets to play their cards, perform their actions, and you continue like this. You continue like this, as simple as that, until a team has depleted the opponent of all of their strength, of all of their health tokens. Catacombs Conquest is a nice, sweet little game, does not overstay its welcome, is not more complicated than it has to be. The original game does feel like the hybrid between a full D&D type of experience with a dungeon with several layers, encounters, shops, etc., etc., with a flicking mechanic. This one feels much more like a traditional flicking game with a little bit of a fantasy theme there, but then also with a couple of interesting ideas mechanically. The theme doesn't feel pasted on because you have enough variety in the cards, you have enough variety in the effects to get the sense that these characters are doing different things and things that seem to be contextually appropriate. These characters do seem to morph into one another as the game progresses, but that is a minor thing. There's still enough fantasy there to give me the sense that this is not an abstract game. And yet again, I can play with children without any problem because the complexity and the length of the game are appropriate. I played it with 7-year-old children, with slightly older kids, no problem whatsoever. And it's not that the original Catacombs really has more rules than this one, or many more, or to the point that it makes it not really suitable to play with children from the point of view of the complexity. It's not the complexity, it is the length. Simply the attention span of young gamers is not as strong as that of their adult counterparts. And so this is one that you can play with your children, definitely more of a family version of Catacombs. And you can also play with your friends as the first game in the night, or even the last one, just as a change of pace after you played some really heavy Euro and your brain is sort of like overheated. Then you're flicking things here. There's that fun, of course. There's always the unpredictable element, people cheering, people saying no because some obvious shot did not go the way you expected. There's that fun element, that unpredictability that comes from dexterity. Somebody who is really good at it, of course, will just be deterministic, but I'm not that player. Luckily enough, none of the people I played it with is all that good, which to me is part of the fun, precisely part of the unpredictability that comes from not being perfect. Flickers is what gives the game part of its flavor and part of its fun. From the point of view of strategy, simply put, there is a little bit of hand management and resource management when it comes to those cards. And that's an interesting aspect. Again, it doesn't make the game a heavy euro, but at least you are caring about what kind of cards you have, the strategy, the short and long-term strategy that surrounds the order in which you are playing your cards, trying to create certain powerful combos to save cards for things that you think the opponent may do, so you can react to those. But there really also is a long-term strategy due to the fact that you have some control over when you're going to reshuffle your deck. You play the card and the card is discarded, but if you go to the end of your deck and you don't get to reshuffle your cards automatically, you need to play a card to do so. That means that actually, if you get that reshuffling card early on, you can choose to use it early on. And so you recycle the same effects fairly fast, and maybe you get the card again, etc., etc. Now, at the beginning, this idea concerned me a little bit because I was afraid that the game was going to become too gamey. People were going to figure out the exact algorithm of when exactly to reshuffle. But that really doesn't happen because I'm a reshuffle after I play 10 cards. But of course, from one game to the other, those 10 cards will be different. So the algorithm doesn't necessarily always work. And then also there may be the case that I don't get that card at all until that's the last card that comes out of the deck. And so I reshuffle when I reshuffle. However, if that happens, there is a case, there's a bit of a positive loop there that may emerge from the use of those healing cards. You hit the opponent and you damage them, and then the opponent gets to heal, and then the opponent damages again and you heal again, and maybe now you have more health points that you had at the beginning. I don't remember seeing rules against that, but even if that is not the case, you still have a big bunch of health points, and then you reshuffle the deck, and then those healing cards are back right away with a good chance of getting them again. So there have been cases in which we found ourselves in a situation, a bit of stasis, in which damage and then heal, damage and then heal, damage and then heal, and it seemed like the game was going nowhere. But that, chances are, statistically won't happen all the time. Did not happen in every game, and even if it happens, it doesn't happen it doesn't last forever. Sooner or later the cycle breaks. One side manages to gain momentum over the other, and then the game goes to its natural progression. But in general, the game didn't feel too long, too cumbersome in any way. So Catacombs Conquest, for when you don't have the time or the space or the players to play a full catacomb, this could be a good option. It can also just be a nice, less threatening, less demanding introduction to the system. Now, between the full beast Catacombs and the small intro portable set, oh, if only there was an intermediate set, something that is not as, doesn't require as much commitment as the big one, but has a little more meat and depth than this one. Oh, if only there was such intermediate set. Oh, it turns out, look at that there is one actually, which is Catacombs and Castles, which I will review in the near future. For today, this is all about Catacombs Conquest, fun, small, little game.